I'm talking to Ben Gioia. I'm very excited to have him with me. Ben is a coach, consultant. He has his own business called Influence with a Heart. He works with organizations on empathy and mindfulness. My goodness, I know he's an author of 2 books, a speaker, and I'm sure I've overlooked a couple of his many qualities and talents. He's worked with many organizations. He's launched a hugely successful magazine. And I'm looking forward to talking with Ben today more about his life of purpose, because I know it's taken a few turns and I want to hear all about it. So that's what we're going to do today, Ben. Welcome.
Thank you so much, Jen. It's a really pleasure to be here. I'm very excited about today.
Yeah, thanks. So tell me more. I know just a little bit surface too. So I'm as excited to learn more about you and the work that you do. How do you work with organizations on empathy?
Yeah, that's a great question. I'm working on a big project right now with a Fortune 100 company, and I unfortunately can't say who it is. Like, I'm contractually bound not to.
Yeah.
But the nice thing is that when they reached out to me, they realized that they needed some help because they were, a big component of customer service in this company, and they needed to get away from, the kind of metrics-only mindset and really move into this space of customer experience, not just customer service, but customer experience. This idea of that the customer is on a journey with you. So it's not just these one-off transactions, but how do you engage with them from a place of deep connection, step by step by step. So they knew they needed help. They found their way to me, which was lovely. And they said, okay, what do we do about this? So I spent a bunch of days on site with them, reviewed a ton of their information, and then just recently made a lot of recommendations for a training program that we're about to roll out to 15,000 people. And the fun thing is that the training program is a combination of traditional training, that'll be facilitated by managers and leaders. And there's also a video game component. So we're working with a video game studio to actually create a game that will be part of the learning experience for these employees.
That's exciting.
It's really neat.
And what strikes me about that is just like the element of empathy is a new element, or not new element, but newly accepted and acknowledged element of organizational development. The new technologies in organizational development are coming into play in your work. How phenomenal is that?
Yeah, it's really amazing. I hadn't even thought about this before this company reached out to me, and they said, hey, we have this idea, we'd like to go through a traditional approach, and we'd like to add this video game component. I said, wow, that's, what a great idea. And the fact that they're restricted, at least as far as they can, they can't bring 15,000 people into a 3.5-day training for all sorts of obvious reasons, but they can bring the training to the people and do it in a way that's more engaging for a ton of that population, and also for the people who are not game players or think of themselves traditionally as game players, that there is still an aspect for the out-of-game experience. So I think they hit all the stops quite nicely.
Do you see that awareness growing in general, the awareness that companies need to match the needs of learning to their organization?
I do. Yeah, I see that more and more, that companies really looking at their own employees as a market segment or as their own customers. And how do you serve your customers, right? You figure out what they need, what their challenges are, how to help them get there as fast as possible, and then look at all of the available ways to do it, and not just assume that because we've been doing X, Y, and Z for years, if not decades, that's going to be applicable. Because especially in like this organization that I'm working with, the range of people is tremendous. It's 15,000 people, 400 different job titles, and an incredible demographic range as well. So from a marketing perspective, you think about it, it's an absolute mess. You can't, it's not so easy to serve that many people in a coherent way. So this is actually opening up the door to kind of leveling that playing field.
Yeah, because anytime you get people involved, of course, there's that ability variation as well.
Yeah.
In addition to the demographics, the abilities are just human ranges as well.
Exactly. And I appreciate you saying that, because, we're doing one of the big foci of, of this training is to really, really focus on, people's day-to-day experience and not so much their work experience. Because it's like, why do you want to play a game that's about your work? Nobody wants to do that. But if we could really, really look for common situations, what's it like being at the store, driving your car, dealing with your kids, all of those kinds of very, very common human experiences. Those are the places that we're creating the learning and using that as a bridge to their day-to-day work experience.
Was this depth of learning the reason you started your company?
Can you ask that question again?
Was this level of learning to reach people in this varied way, was that the impetus for starting your company?
Yeah, that was a component of it, and the other part of it was, I needed to do it for me. I had been in organizations for quite a few years, both for-profit and non-profit, and loved the work that I was doing, from a creative side. And as I moved into nonprofit work, I loved the service that I was doing, and then also felt a lot of restriction, and didn't feel like that I could shine in the way that I wanted and needed to shine, and deliver things the way that I wanted to deliver if I was working for someone else. And it's been, fortunately, after quite a few years and a little bit of blood, sweat, and tears, at least, organizations are responding to me now, going, "Hey, we like your style. We like the way you do stuff. Come in and help us," which is kind of proof in the pudding for me, because I go, because I don't feel like I would have the same leverage if I was working within the organization that I do coming in from the outside, for kind of all of the apparent reasons. So it's been really a blessing.
Did you know what you wanted to do when you started?
I only knew that I wanted to make a massive positive impact in the world. That was about as much of my purpose that I had articulated at that point, and about as much clarity of vision as I had at that point. And that I was trying to keep connecting it back to things that I loved and ways that I knew that I could help people. But at the beginning, I was fairly clueless, to say the least.
And the reason I'm asking so many questions on this is because, it's a conversation about lives of purpose. And for people who haven't been able to articulate it, but like you in the past have that feeling of knowing that there's something more, but not quite. I find people are in one of two places. They either know what their purpose is, but haven't done anything about it.
Yeah.
Or they really don't quite know. They just have a sense. It's a feeling.
Yeah.
So I was curious at what juncture you were at, whether you knew and just hadn't taken that big step yet, because it does take a lot of guts.
Yeah.
Thank
you. Definitely, I would say a little bit of both. I knew it to a certain point, that analogy of, you're driving your car at night and the headlights only shine so far. And yet you keep driving because you know that the light will, show you if something's in the way or not, or if you have to make the turn. So I just really, really trusted that orientation first and foremost. And then, just started connecting with people, with coaches, going to trainings, going to events, and understanding from all sorts of people with all sorts of backgrounds that we all essentially came from the same place. Like, we knew that there was something we needed to do. We didn't necessarily know how we needed to get there. And the repeated, or one of the repeated, pieces of wisdom that I kept hearing was, like, hold that vision, but hold it in your open hand and not like that. And that really served me tremendously well.
Again, I'm picking up things that you're saying that are so important to me to hear because of other things that I hear from people too, and that I believe so strongly. When you said the repeated words of wisdom that you hear, the thread that I believe people hold on to and get through are the repetitive words of wisdom. And they vary for each individual, but it's that repetitive message.
Yeah.
And once they hear it, it's like, okay, this I can hold on to. I'll follow this thread. And often it's just a thread, but if you hold on to it and follow it, it will get you to the answer.
It's true. And I think historically a very stubborn person, which is both a challenge and a blessing, because I think stubbornness is the other side of persistence, right? We'll doggedly go after it, exactly. I would hear these words of wisdom, these little nuggets of greatness, and I'd be like, oh yeah, and it would resonate on a certain kind of level, and it would inspire a certain level of action. And it was amazing how even after years at a time, I would drop the ball on those things. I would be inconsistent about it, and then I would hear it again, and I'd go, okay, now I really get it, and I would go back in, and it just over and over and over, because there's so much habituation, so much conditioning, good, bad, and everything in between, that it's really, at least in my experience, it's that you're shifting your mindset, you're shifting, you're literally reprogramming and recreating your neural pathways. It takes a really long time.
Yeah. And I was going to ask if you, I believe really strongly that we have to reform all those neural pathways to do something that big and that different. Yeah. I also think that we can run, but we can never hide.
Although I've tried to hide, and there are certainly days that I've stayed under the covers, literally. Like, I don't want to do this anymore. And then, sometimes I've taken the break and, started later that day or the next day. And then what I finally figured out after the first several years too was, even just the little bit of movement, that little bit of persistence, and it could be, the seemingly the most inconsequential thing, but as long as it's part of the mix, it contributes. It's like, I can't think of a great analogy, right? But it's that, that kind of micro movement, that little bit of muscle that, day to day to day you're not seeing, but you look at over a year and you go, oh my goodness, like, look what happened.
Yeah.
And then I started finally seeing that after a while and going, you know what, even if I, hate everything that's happening today, if I can just keep moving forward, just like get through a little bit more, either my mood is going to shift, because it does, because everything changes, or if it doesn't shift, I'm going to make it to the end of the day and, allow myself to stop and, resume the next day.
Yeah. So what did you work on first? Did you start your business first, or did you write your first book?
I started my business first. I started as a consultant, and primarily with one client. And, I was quite blessed, because this person, I knew him in a different context. He was launching his online business, and he said, hey, would you like to come be my director of sales and marketing? And I said, absolutely, I would love to. And then I said, is it okay that I have background in neither sales nor marketing? And he said, yes, it is. Figure it out. So, we struck a logical agreement, around my level of capability, how much he would pay me, my level of savings at that point. And I learned as much as I could, as quickly as possible. And then after about a year and a half or so, I started really zeroing in on, what my thing could be. And that was what brought me to my first business, which was called Marketing with a Heart, and my first book of the same name.
How is that different from what you're doing now?
So initially there was, a much bigger focus literally on the marketing stuff, the, copywriting, getting super clear on messaging, connecting super deeply with, your customer profile, customer avatar, whatever you want to call that. and then kind of building the components of your business around that. And, I did that for quite a few years, and I loved it for, it was my baby at that time. and it was what helped me learn a whole bunch. But, after I'd say about 4 or 5 years, I started looking at it and it wasn't so exciting to me anymore. And I was, asking myself, okay, like what's going on here? Why am I not so passionate anymore? And I realized that marketing with a heart, although valuable and although, like I said, my baby, didn't tell the whole story. So I did a whole bunch of coaching, a whole bunch of reflection, probably about a year's worth of processing and introspection, and about 4 months of coaching. And that's when I got to Influence with a Heart. And one of the biggest parts of the coaching process was getting really, really crystal clear on my purpose. And that really was a game changer. Because originally, like I said, it was, I want to make a massive positive impact. It's like, okay, great. Now it's, I'm here to inspire awakening, love and joy, so all beings can realize their greatness, act with compassion, help more people, and live in absolute freedom. And it was like, once I got to that, I was like, oh my God, here we go. It was inspiring. I mean, it gives me goosebumps. And then I was able to actually use it as, both a filter and a barometer for everything that I was doing. And, influence has a much bigger playing field than marketing. Like marketing is a subset of influence.
Exactly.
In my book.
Yeah, mine too.
Yeah. So I was able to apply, what I was teaching to leadership, to story, to thought leadership, to marketing, to communication. And I shifted, or I put a much greater focus on empathy, on story, and on thought leadership as my 3 core components of my framework, both as a way to talk about my business and as a way to construct my book.
Yeah, it makes perfect sense to me, and it all flows together, which I always see the path of anyone's purpose. I mean, in my work with coaching, I work with people on their purpose. So I always see their pathways, and they're very logical to me. The outside perspective is very clear. It's when we're in the middle of it, when I'm working with somebody, it's like, I don't see this. Well, of course they see it because it's the outside perspective.
Yeah.
And the outside perspective is very clear. So your path of your marketing company and your influence makes perfect sense. It all fits together, and it's brilliant. And
Thank you.
Yeah, I just love it. It's so exciting. And when you get goosebumps saying your purpose, so do I.
Right.
It's a vision that, okay, yeah, let's hear it. Let's see it, and let's be part of it, which is what we all feel, I think, when we hear and want to be part of everybody's purpose.
Yeah. Thank you for saying that. And the other part of it that I didn't realize until I had been doing Influence with a Heart for a while was that switch totally reframed like the challenge, the anxiety, the fear, the doubt. It doesn't mean that those things don't still happen. I mean, they're probably they will happen forever on some level or another. But it became a lot more fun and made me realize that, kind of re-emphasize that fact that it all changes, and that I was coming from, so much more literally from my heart. I was like, okay, I can do this, and okay, this is a drag right now, and I'm having a hard day or a hard month or whatever the case may be. It's okay, because I'm holding this bigger vision, and it's going to pay off, because everybody I know who has stuck it out, it's paid off.
Yeah.
And that was such an amazing thing, like how, how powerful persistence is. And it's almost, it's like deceptively simple in so many ways.
Yeah, and the clarity is, because you'd used the word clarity before. The clarity is like, oh, thank you.
Yes, exactly. Exactly.
Yeah. So
I remember the first time I was like, Mom, I finally figured it out.
And she said, "Oh, good."
Yeah.
I'm guessing it's
Yeah,
the
she
mom
did.
response.
Yeah, yeah.
Um, so when you went on to Influence, was your marketing work then parceled off to another entity, or are you continuing that? Because that in itself is also brilliant.
Yeah, thank you, thank you. Yeah, it's de-emphasized at this point. You know, yeah, I mean, there's clearly the, you know, the components of influence that I'm, you know, teaching or consulting or coaching around, that drive marketing choices for people.
Right.
But I'm not doing so much of the marketing stuff. Um, you know, that fortunately at this point, you know, the companies or the individuals that I'm working with either know how to do that stuff themselves, they have a team, or that they, you know they need to hire someone for it. You know, what I realized too is that you know, a lot of those marketing things that I kind of shown at um, were time consuming, and just in the way that I didn't want to spend my time anymore.
Mm-hmm.
And that was a really, really powerful, powerful lesson and insight, because, you know, people kept saying, you know, do what you love, do what you love. And there was that fear of letting go of, hey, I'm good at these things, and people, you know, appreciate and pay me for these things. So when I started going, okay, you know, I'm not really doing that stuff anymore, or, you know, doing that level of that stuff, that was a little scary at first, because a few people were like, hey, you know, why
Yeah.
not? I said, you know, because my time is better spent both for myself and because of the impact I can make. You know, I can like impact a whole bunch more people in that kind of way. So,
What was the response you got?
um, it was kind of a range of things of, you know, well, what are we going to do now?
It's all about me, isn't it? Yeah.
Exactly. Some of it was that. Some of it was, you know, oh, we're sorry to hear that, you know, because we love, you know, you either doing it or, you know, helping us do it. I mean, it was ultimately supportive, and it was ultimately, you know, from a place of care. I think, you know, just there's that, you know, there's that human response of change,
Yeah.
and, you know, when you're relying on someone, yeah, because I think that a lot of us who are in these, you know, consulting and coaching relationships, you know, even though we're an outside consultant or a coach, you know, we're part of the team,
Yeah.
you know, or we're this person's partner
Yeah.
in many respects. And then, you know, we our businesses evolve as we evolve, and then other people go, you know,
Yeah.
how do I deal with that? And
Yeah.
yeah.
It's so it's interesting.
Mm,
One of the things that first struck me in a most positive way when I first met you, I just immediately resonated was with a heart.
mm, mhm,
Everything was with a heart.
mm.
Was that one of your repeating messages when you were first uncovering?
It was, yeah, and excuse me. So that came about two different ways. One was from my spiritual practice. So I've been meditating for probably about 12 years now. Not always consistently. I want to say that to everybody in the audience. So keep doing it anyway. But, you know, part of it was that. So there was that whole aspect of, you know, with meditation, there's the wisdom part, you know, the insight into your experience and the world around you, etc. And then the other part of it is the compassion, and that, you know, you need both sides of that equation to make things work, and to, you know, because you don't want to, you know, be such a fabulously blissful meditator that you drop the rest of the world around you, right? Like, you still have to be part of the mix.
So tempting sometimes, though.
Oh, right, yeah, absolutely.
Sorry.
Can I just go live in a cave for a while, you know? um, and then the other part of it was strategic, because I was looking at all of this marketing stuff as I was beginning the marketing with a heart process, and even before I had articulated those words. And, you know, there's just all of that stuff about the you know, the sleazy marketing, the manipulative stuff, the used car salesman, you know, that whole image. the stuff that we still see all the time.
Mm-hmm.
And I was going, there are a bunch of people with really amazing services who are doing such good stuff in the world, nonprofit, for-profit businesses, the whole range. And, they want to be, they want every aspect of their business to be in as much integrity as they are. And that was when I went, wait a minute, let me start talking about with the heart. And I would say that to people in networking events. I'd say, what's your story? I'd say, I have a business called Marketing with a Heart. And they would go, oh my God, I have to talk to you. Right? That just right off the bat resonated so tremendously. And, the beauty is I'm seeing more and more of that, over this last decade.
That is really encouraging. I don't think in any of your materials, well, maybe I don't recall because I see the words so much, but the concepts that it recalls, of course, to me, are connection and authenticity. And the word that you did use is integrity. And that's immediate, it just feels like one warm hug of reality in the truest sense. All with just saying with a heart. So that is the perception that comes through very honestly.
Yeah. Thank you for saying that. I appreciate the warm hug analogy.
Yeah.
Yeah. And, the other part of it too is, for all of the years that I've been doing my own business and, all of the years before, when I look back, there's online traffic. Yes, there are our email lists and our social media connections and all those kinds of things. But, when you get down to it, it's still person to person. At some point it's getting to that point. And then it said, let me remember that all the time and keep that focus. And that helped a lot because, at the beginning of my whole process, when it was still Marketing with a Heart, everybody's saying, build your list and you need 10,000 people and that. And that was terrifying. I was trying to just, get started with somebody. And I realized that, hey, I don't, especially at that point, I didn't need 10,000 people. I needed about 6 or even 4 right at the beginning.
Yeah.
And I can do that. And that's what I say. That's what I say to, everybody who I talk to at some point or another, hey, stop worrying about, all of this stuff that you're hearing, figure out, just, start with the basics, find the people who you can serve in the best possible way, who will love to be served by you, and build from there. Because, if you can serve the heck out of them, they're going to do the marketing for you, essentially.
I absolutely agree. And I think that message is one that needs to be louder than the message of online funnels and lists and things that maybe the technique is very effective, but it needs to be recognized as a technique rather than a connection.
Right.
And possibly that's how it was originally intended.
Yeah. I believe so. Yeah.
It's just gotten diluted though. And I believe now there's so much of it that is communicated in a way where people are misunderstanding it as a way to connect and build success, and nothing substitutes for a connection.
Yeah.
If the communication goes out authentically and you build it online through a funnel, it will work fantastically.
Absolutely.
But if there's not an authentic message in that, it doesn't matter how good your funnel is.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah, I agree with you. And I think the other half of that, which is certainly implied, but I want to say it, for the benefit of people watching this, is that for you yourself, for me, myself, it's not just these tools. Like I need to express myself in the way that feels good, because I need to, whatever word you want to use, like I want to resonate at a really high level, because that's what is going to connect people with me. I mean, of course, I need to be talking about the things that they care about and ways that I can help them. But, if there's not that resonance, not that energy, not that heart, then it's not going to mean a damn thing.
Thank you so much for saying that, because I overlook saying the things that to me are my own, codes of living, but because they're mine, they're not obvious to everybody. Yeah. I, I have to live by my own, and everyone needs to live by their own codes. Yeah. Like that. Yeah.
Indeed.
Goodness. Oh, so with all of the growth that you're having, how do you see yourself managing it as you continue on your path?
Yeah, I think that's a great question. I've been thinking about that a lot this year because this has been my biggest year so far. I'm saying that with so much gratitude, so much humility, so much yay.
Yeah, I'm applauding with you. That's fantastic.
Thank you. Yeah, yeah. I'm, working with my biggest client, and have done my two biggest proposals already. Like light years ahead of even what I did last year. And I'm kind of going like, holy cow, here we are, here it's happening. And one of the first things that came so clearly to me was like, wow, I need to simplify. Like as things are getting bigger, like I need to scale down in many respects. So someone was using the analogy of qigong, that practice. The idea of 70% effort, that you go for it all out at 70%, right? So you're not driving yourself crazy and killing yourself in the process, that you're going full force, but from that relaxed space. So both energetically and also, I was just thinking about, the way I'm, do things in my business day to day. I've eliminated, I mean, first and foremost, I unsubscribed from about 75% of the lists that I'm on. I said, you know what, like, I have so much stuff, like I don't need to keep reading these things. I mean, of course, I want to be current with my industry. And yes, things change quickly, but, I don't need, 9 emails from everybody a week for that to happen because I don't read them anyway. So it's just like unsubscribing, opened up so much space to so much stuff. Right. And then, I thought about, okay, what else is key? And a lot of it, in and around the simplicity was, I could try to do, all of these, kind of business things every day, or let me put even extra emphasis on, the self-care, the morning routine, the meditation, the affirmations, the exercise, the lots of water. So those were probably the biggest shifts that I made, right off the bat. I stopped. I think I was so caught up in the what is it? The dream, like the entrepreneurial dream.
Right.
That comes with the entrepreneurial. Oh my God, I'm just working my ass off and blah 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 blah. And I mean, there's something to be said for tearing it up. And there's sometimes you have to go for it, and go big and not sleep so much. And I get that. And I'm all about that. And, for a time, and then you have to stop or scale back so you can recover, to re-engage that, that flow, because it's for me, that flow is so tied into my creativity. Like when I'm in that, it's because my creativity is really high. And I'm like, okay, I'm happy getting up at 4, that's fine. And then when I'm not, I just say, you know what, I'm not right now, I'm sleeping till 8. I'm going to move slower, and let, refill the pot or whatever analogy. That was really, really important for me too. Because I think because, of course I want 100% discretionary time for the rest of my life, and I want to be on an island somewhere whenever I want to be on that island. The killing myself to get there, really doesn't work.
Well, you will probably still get to the island, but if you kill yourself to get there, the quality of time on the island might not be the same.
Exactly right. And checking emails and texts from them. It doesn't sound fun either.
And the way the world works, your Wi-Fi could break down.
Right, exactly. Exactly. So,
Oh, um, it's interesting because I have a similar sort of pattern with creativity and energy, very similar. Um, the way that I have thought of it in my life is I think of it as when I have a vision, I need that quiet time, the creativity time to reflect and be in that mode. And so distractions don't serve me well at all. When I'm in the action stage, I have the energy and the focus to go all out, and I'm happy to do so.
yeah, yep,
And I find nature supports me with that.
totally.
It's not an effort, it's very
Right.
natural.
Yep.
But then I've achieved what that creativity has fed me to do.
Yeah.
And so then it's time to step back and enjoy it and allow it.
Yeah, exactly.
And I found that's my personal pattern. I don't know how everyone else manages theirs, but that has been mine.
Yeah, yeah. I appreciate you saying that. That has been mine as well. It took me quite a few years to allow myself to do that. Because again, there was a lot of, what I was hearing from other people, what I was seeing through marketing, and how I was being influenced by the industries, the different industries that I was paying attention to, because it was go, go, go.
Yeah.
There's the whole American thing,
Yeah.
at that level of insanity in certain ways.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I grew up. I was hyper academic in high school, in a very competitive high school, and it took a lot of unlearning to go, hey, like let me just allow myself to be smart, rather than keep having to prove to myself and other people that I'm smart. Because when I allowed myself to do it, people went, oh, you're smart, like you understand this stuff.
Yeah.
Okay, cool. I'm glad you realized that.
And you weren't having to demonstrate it on a test.
Exactly. Yeah.
Mm.
Yeah. And after the tests, the structured tests through school, I was still putting myself through, that kind of process, because everything sounded like a test and I had to prove myself. And, it doesn't mean that you don't show up and, do great, all the time, and great implies, the mistakes and the humanness as well. But again, I think going back to that, that 70% efforting.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Really, really, really powerful.
That is. I love that analogy.
Yeah.
When you're not testing, what topics do you love delving into? Like what study do you enjoy?
Yeah, gosh. The things related to meditation, forever now. So, in more of the spiritual side of things, straight up meditation. I follow the teachings of the Buddha. Kind of as my primary path. So digging into that stuff is fascinating, and no matter how deep you go,
There's more.
there's always more. um, and then how that branches out into mindfulness, in the space of the business world and daily life. That stuff is fascinating to me. And then the bridge from there into innovation, and how that's applicable both in a business, in a business space, in a creative space, and when you kind of look at all of those things, you go, wow, these are all kind of the same things, right? They're packaged a little bit differently depending on who's talking about it, their orientation, their background, etc. So I love all of that kind of stuff. Yeah, I read a lot of fiction, and I know you said kind of what do I study. I study a lot through reading fiction. I have realized over these decades that I've been an avid reader, Um, I think part of it is because I have a very, very high standard. Like I've been writing since I was 12, and I've been studying writing since I was probably 13. So I have an incredibly high standard for writing. And what I've come to realize is if I'm reading good writing, then they're teaching me something somehow, regardless. Whether it's the writing itself, whether it's the topic, whether it's the kind of the attenuation and connection to the human experience and being able to actually articulate that into prose, or if it's something more getting into the space of science and how the brain works and what the insula does in terms of empathy, all of those things. So I appreciate this question because it always makes me think about like, what the hell do I do with myself?
Oh, I have no doubt there's lots. Yeah.
There is lots. It's not so procedural or kind of specific kind of process oriented. It's kind of like, I think about, okay, I'm trying to spend a portion of my day, doing some reading, doing some learning. If it's applicable, like if I know I need to learn something, for a client or, hey, here's this new piece of software, of course there's that. But a lot of times, I really, really trust in kind of what shows up, whether it's what shows up in the email, what somebody says to me, something I see in a movie. And I've really, really come to allow myself, really allow those things to happen. And because, I'm not sure of the entire range of audience who's going to be, going to be viewing this. But like the universe is listening, whether, thinking of, God, the universe, your subconscious, everything in between. And, if you pay attention and you keep kind of putting the input and letting the response happen, it's so incredible, how like almost that fast.
Right. Exactly. It comes right back to us in different ways. Yeah.
It really does. Yeah.
And I believe it's up to us to respond, to take that message, like we were talking about earlier, the message, getting those messages, and then respond to them in some way, whether it's picking up that book and following it or looking up, a thread or whatever.
Yeah. Yeah. And thank you for saying that. And I'd like to piggyback on that too. Just to say that sometimes the response is quiet.
Oh gosh.
Whether it's, a formal, meditation reflection or, you go take a walk. Because, sometimes the response is to really like let it in, let it into your body, let your subconscious start, processing it and chewing on it and whatever else it's going to do. Yeah.
Ben, since we're talking about this, and I always love these conversations because I just like for them to go in whatever direction they go.
Yeah.
Since we're talking about this, one of the things that I like to talk about is how we hear our intuition and messages and such. And I'm curious, do you have specific ways that you receive information in your body? How do you hear your wisdom?
Yeah, thank you. Great question. And I think it's a few different ways. It's in my body. So my primary meditation practice is, body-based scanning.
Okay.
So there's just, I pay attention to my body a lot, and I practice that a lot, both on the cushion and, walking around through my day. So there's that. Being a writer, a lot of times through the process of writing, things get revealed. Sometimes it's on the paper, sometimes it's not on the paper. And then, what I was saying before, what we were both saying before about the universe responding, is that sometimes intuition comes from the outside, even though there's nothing really on the outside if you think about it. Because of in through somebody else's words, or a headline on an advertisement on the bus, or one of the things that has I've really been tuning into is I'm visiting family on the East Coast, and I normally live in San Francisco. So there are all these different birds here and all these different bird songs here. So I've been going out every morning and just plopping myself down and closing my eyes and listening to these birds. It's amazing, and I don't necessarily come out of it going, okay, here's an articulate sentence of wisdom that I have gleaned from hearing this bird, but it's the reminder of just like, how awesome and amazing everything is.
Yeah.
And that in and of itself, like if I can connect, when I can connect to that, then everything else, lines up quite nicely.
Yeah. Yeah. We're so connected with the earth. I mean, humans aren't that far away from birds.
Right.
Yeah. In fact, we share some of the same song-making elements in our brain that birds do.
Oh, well, I didn't know. Thank you.
I have a research link that I included in one of my articles. I'll send it to you.
Thank you. Thank you. I appreciate that. Yeah, and this is a beautiful example of a bunch of things that we both just said. Like one piece to the other piece, and it was just like boom.
Yeah.
I just learned a whole bunch of things that are compelling, interesting, exciting, and my sense of the universe, my place in it, call it God, call it whatever, just got a little bit bigger and more expansive, just in the last 2 minutes.
And I find your work in general does that. With what you do, you bring that energy and that influence through your work. You lift up and bring knowledge and influence. I wish I could think of a synonym because it's redundant. Influence. But literally, through your purpose and your work, that is what you're doing. I just love it. I'm a real fan.
Thank you. And I think it's appropriate because it is called Influence with a Heart. So
I know, but we do need a couple other words.
Yeah. Yeah. No, thank you for saying that. And kind of going back to, a little bit of the earlier conversation, that took a long time to cultivate, and not only to cultivate practice-wise, like kind of bringing in all of these different aspects that I bring in, but to trust my own capability. And that's something that I want to say to everybody, that I think when we're getting clearer and clearer on our purpose and really digging in and expressing that and finding the words and finding the expression and finding the actions, that a lot of us, and I'm going to be the poster child for this, it's like there's so much about trusting ourselves, and it's trusting our capabilities, it's trusting the intuition, it's trusting the messages that we're getting internally or externally, and it's trusting the mistakes and the failures as well. And that took a long time for me, and I think that can, people I've spoken to, it's taken them a long time too. And there are a lot of people I want to say to them, hey, you can trust, you can trust falling on your face.
I'm so glad you mentioned that, because it isn't something that I thought of, but it's absolutely true. I mean, my goodness. And in my personal opinion, I think that we don't stop making mistakes, or I won't use the word failing because I don't believe in failure.
Right.
But things continue to happen that feel like they're not going the way that we want them to.
Right.
That could be interpreted as a failure.
Yeah.
And they're not failures.
Right.
But if someone's not feeling very encouraged, it could be another block on the back of, oh, here's another reason not to trust myself.
Absolutely. Yeah. And I think that's, one of the, the biggest, opportunities for unlearning that we all have, especially in this country, the United States, because there's so much stuff around, win or lose, pass or fail, you know, um, credit scores, mortgage score, all of that stuff.
Yeah.
It's all, these kind of arbitrary indexes. And I know that they have function and they have purpose in their own ways. So I'm not, saying obliterate all of it, but that's not the whole story. And yeah, that's one of the things that I, want people to understand as soon as possible. And that I also find a lot of people are, resistant to at first. You're like, but shouldn't it be this? Shouldn't it not be that? I'm saying no, not necessarily either. Yeah.
And I agree with you. And I think there's where our opportunity is,
Yeah.
because I think that I think we're in a exciting time.
Mhm.
I think that resistance is a time that offers us even more dialogue.
Yeah.
I love the term unlearning. I've heard it applied in the field of education, which
Mhm.
is interesting. And
Mhm.
I also love the way that you're using it,
Mhm.
because it so literally applies to taking away all those old perceptions
Yeah.
in the way that I hear it.
Yeah.
And when I'm thinking of how you're saying it in terms of how you approach your organizations that you work with,
Mhm.
I'm thinking of it in the sense of how you're showing them new ways of doing some of the things that they've done in the past.
Right. Right.
So, in terms of if we apply all this unlearning to our culture, I
Mhm.
think we each have our own opportunities to represent ways that we can each unlearn and influence our circles
Mhm. Yeah.
in
I think.
looking at things differently.
Yeah.
So I love that message that you're bringing. Thank you. That's beautiful.
You're welcome. Thank you. Yeah, and I did you just articulated that all really beautifully. So thank you for that. And then I think the piggyback on that too is that I guess going along with the trust of self and the trust of the journey, is the recognition and the honoring of the wisdom that we all carry,
Yeah.
and that we really do, that we really do know it all, right? And it's just a matter of letting ourselves realize that we do, and that's a hell of a process, and
Yeah.
not so easy.
Yeah. And I agree. Yeah. And I think we're born to live that purpose, and that's an honor in itself.
It really is. It
Yeah.
really is.
And I'm so glad that you're living yours and sharing it with us. Thank you.
My pleasure. Thank you. Yeah, I feel really, really, really grateful, to have the opportunity and to have taken the opportunity, and also truly recognize all of the amazing support that I have. This is all of these individual success stories you know are reliant on everybody around us, the earth, air, water. I mean, it's really something, the support system that we all have, and especially for the fact that you know like I wasn't born in a war torn third world country, right off the bat. Like, what an incredible gift, and what an incredible responsibility to take that and do something really good with it. And really good doesn't have to be epic, according to somebody else's definition. It just has to be, you know like, don't waste it,
Yeah.
because we don't even know if we'll be alive the next minute or the next breath, right?
Mm-hmm.
So, mm,
Yeah. So before we close,
yeah.
is there anything that you'd like to share that I haven't asked or we haven't already covered?
Gosh, uh, I'm going to piggyback a little bit on, I guess, everything in one fell swoop. Um, And I think that's, the beauty of this show and these profiles that you do. Um, I think if you talk to any number of people, I think they could give you any number of ways that the world will be better off. Humanity will be better off. That will overcome the challenges. Yada yada yada. I think one of the absolute integral foundational pieces is this purpose piece. And the more people who are aligned to their purpose and expressing it in whatever that way that is, even if you're driving a bus, but you're still connected to that space, that's the stuff that's going to shift everything else. I mean, you can feed a bunch of people, make a bunch of policy, disarm a bunch of nuclear weapons, but those are still symptomatic, right? It's still, how do we make individual humans the best that they can be? And I think this is one of the foundational avenues to doing that. So, so I want to say thank you for doing that.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah.
Beautiful.
You're welcome.
So, on that lovely note, please tell people how they can reach you.
Yeah, thank you. So I'm at influencewithaheart.com. Please come check me out there. Both of my books are on Amazon in print and digital versions, Marketing with a Heart and Influence with a Heart. And if any of your viewers, listeners would like to reach out to me directly, just please feel free to send me an email, just ben@influencewithaheart.com. Yeah, it's I check my email. I like to know who's reaching out to me. So I welcome everyone.
I'll have everything in the notes, so they'll have it all handy.
Great.
Thank you so much, Ben.
You're welcome, Jan. Thank you. It's really, really been an honor and a pleasure.
Mine too.